Good evening, everyone in Germany, and good day in Suriname, and welcome to our joint event with ILA Bonn on this very special date, the 5th anniversary of Suriname's independence. My name is Luiz Ramalho from the Lateinamerika-Forum Berlin, LAF. LAF is an NGO promoting dialogue and exchange between Latin America and Germany. And this is the 4th event we organize with ILA this year, 2025. Inga Triebel from ILA will be a contributor to our event and the comment moderator. So, Inga, you have the floor to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Inga. I'm voluntarily working for the ILA magazine that exists since 1976 as an independent magazine to bring discussions from Latin America and Abya Yala to a German-speaking audience, and always working as a medium for solidarity. Besides that, I'm a master student at Leiden University in Global and Comparative Philosophy.
Thank you, great. Yes, tonight we celebrate a country that many people have heard of, but few truly know. A country where the rainforest meets the Atlantic, where the call to prayer can be heard next to the rhythm of a Hindu temple, and where on one single street you might walk past a mosque, a synagogue, a church, and a Javanese warung. Suriname is one of those rare places where the world fits into a very small piece of land. Let me take you there for a moment. Just give me a couple of minutes. Imagine flying over the northern shoulder of South America. Below you stretches a vast uninterrupted sea of green. 93% of the country is rainforest. Then suddenly, along the Suriname River, a city appears, Paramaribo, a wooden city full of Dutch colonial houses, Afro-Surinamese rhythms, Indian sweet shops, Javanese noodle stands, markets where maroon women sell vegetables from the forest. With a population of 620,000 people, Suriname is smaller than many European cities and many German cities, but its society is one of the most culturally layered places on earth. Hindustani families whose ancestors arrived from India under indentured labor contracts, Javanese communities who brought Indonesia's traditions to the Caribbean, Creoles shaped by the long history of colonization, Maroons, descendants of enslaved Africans who escaped into the forest and built their own autonomous republics, indigenous nations who have lived along the rivers for 1,000 years, and put into the mix Chinese, Lebanese, Brazilian, and Dutch diasporas, and then you have it. It's small, but it's vast in stories. And I would take 2 or 3 minutes to talk a little bit of the history. You must understand the country looking back. You need to go back. And for more than 300 years, Suriname was a Dutch plantation colony built on the labor of enslaved Africans, and it was one of the most brutal plantation societies in the Caribbean. But Suriname has also one of the most extraordinary stories of resistance. I just mentioned enslaved people fled into the rainforest and formed the Maroon nations, who fought the colonial army in the past and eventually forced the Dutch to sign peace treaties in the 1700s. These documents are among the earliest written recognition of black autonomy in the Americas. After the abolition of the slavery in 1863, and the Dutch brought indentured laborers from India and Java by the tens of thousands. They came with hopes, hardships, and they left permanent marks on the country's religions, food, politics, and everyday life. And we even included in the publication a playlist for music from Suriname. By the 20th century, Suriname had become a society with almost every religious holidays were celebrated by everyone, not because they share the same faith, but because they share the same nation and the same home. So on November 25th, 75, Suriname became an independent republic. It was a hopeful, proud, and emotional moment. The Dutch flag was lowered, the Surinamese flag rose. But independence comes with uncertainty. Almost half the population, many people say one third, and other almost half, left for the Netherlands in the years around 75, fearing instability, economic instability, political turbulence. The Surinamese diaspora is a very important factor now for the country. And over 350 people became one of the country's strongest cultural and political bridges. Decades that followed the independence were not easy. A military coup, a civil war in the interior, and recurring economic crisis. But Suriname also showed resilience and returning to democracy in 91 and maintaining it since. So tonight we are not only commemorating a historical date, we are acknowledging a journey of a small nation with a big soul. Suriname today stands at a crossroads because, offshore oil we discovered, and this is a drama, can be a drama. Balancing environmental protection with oil discoveries is a huge challenge. Seeking economic stability while protecting social diversity, trying to heal wounds of the past, of the legacy. We celebrate a country that has given the world something very rare, a vision of coexistence, imperfect, conflictual, but real. A place where the descendants of enslaved Africans, Indians, Javanese migrants, indigenous people, and European colonists have built a society that belongs to all of them. So I'm honored to guide you through the evening, and I now invite our speakers to take us deeper into this extraordinary story. And we will start with Tessa Leuwsha. She's joining us from Suriname. And we are now, we are commemorating, but we have also to reflect on deeper journeys of memory, identity, and belonging. Few artists have captured this inner histories as vividly as Tessa. She's a writer, a documentary filmmaker from Paramaribo, and she brings Suriname's past to life through human stories, so intimate stories. Her film Murder Suriname is screened worldwide and is a powerful testament to how our nation remembers and how it heals. What makes her work so moving is the way she writes from within, through families, through women, through voices that colonial history tried to silence. Especially today on this anniversary, your perspective, Tessa, is essential. So I would love to start by hearing your impressions from the commemorations in Paramaribo. I would like to join, but unfortunately it's not possible. And for me, your writings, a few guiding topics also stand out. Language and mental decolonization, reclaiming history, women and resilience, art across borders. Thank you for being with us today. And just tell us a little bit about what is happening now and how you see it from your point of view. And we are truly honored to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Luiz, for your introduction, and I'm very happy to be here to join you today and to tell a little bit more about Suriname, the country where I've been living for 30 years. Today is the day we celebrate the independence. 50 years ago, it's a lot of festivities going on outside in the city center with a great parade and a lot of guests from abroad. People are dressed up in the Surinamese flag. Children are yelling and shouting around. It's really a very busy day, and a lot of people came to see the parade. So it's people are proud. That's the overall sentiment that I sense. People are very proud to have achieved 50 years. The journey that you described was a very intense one, Luiz, from independence to the military period, and now holding on to democracy, facing all kinds of economic challenges. But we are still here, and it's something to celebrate today.
And thinking about your work, Dutch and Suriname identity, Suriname's story from the inside, not from European perspective, feminist lens, and now seeing the festivities, what do you associate?
Well, maybe to start with a very important one, the language. So in Suriname, we are a country situated in South America, but we're the only Dutch-speaking country in the continent. And well, of course, that has its colonial reasons, but it's an obstacle today, I think, to really integrate in the continent, within the continent. I've been living here 30 years, as I said earlier, and the Dutch language is really something that has this very long history. And over these 30 decades, I've seen the Surinamese language. Of course, we speak more languages here. Every identity, every group of people has its own language, but we have a common language, that's Surinamese, Saranang Tongo we call it. And there is an appreciation that's growing for the Surinamese language. And you see that on the radio, for instance, you can hear it in songs. People now tend to use the Surinamese language more and more. Also politicians, they hold their speeches in the Surinamese language. And so the language is an important factor by which you can measure the growth of Suriname independence mentally. So we are independent, but it takes a very long time after the date 50 years ago where we became independent from the Netherlands to become mentally independent. And I've seen that change becoming stronger and stronger over the years, and especially the language is a very good sign to derive that from.
Ethnic diversity, I mentioned it. Is it also divisional, or is it, let's say, accepted, this coexistence? How do you assess it at the moment? And now people are, of course, commemorating and happy, but are there tensions among the different ethnic groups?
Well, I think you have discrimination all over the world. So, in Suriname, we call Suriname Sweetie Suriname. That means sweet Suriname. We have this image of ourselves as being a very tolerant and happy, living together people, nation. But of course, there are frictions and tensions among the different ethnic groups. However, people are getting along quite well. These frictions, I wouldn't even name it tensions, but these frictions, they usually are on a very low level. It doesn't rise to tensions that cause demonstrations or upheaval in the country. We have managed somehow with this over 500,000 people in this small nation to live side by side. And of course, because the groups have mingled, the Moxies, as we call the people of mixed race, are becoming slowly the largest group of people in the
Okay,
country.
okay.
So if there are problems, it's solving it by itself, because people, intermarriage happens a lot, and interrelationships. So I wouldn't say it's the biggest problem of Suriname at the time. We have these frictions, of course, but in the end, we're all living together.
So it's being solved by love.
It's solved by love. It's solved by a good glass of beer at the end of the week. We have a country that has the feel of a village. Where we meet
Okay.
each other, and where we not all know each other, of course, but we are linked somehow. A very common question to ask when you do not know a person is, who's your mother and who's your father? That's a very common question. If I were to meet you and you would be a Surinamese person, I would ask you, Luiz, who's your mother, who's your father? And mostly there is a connection right away, because you would say, my he's this and so person. And then I would say, oh, did he work there, or did he went to school there? And immediately you would have a connection, because the scale of the population is that small, that we are somehow linked through history, through work, through studies, and that gives a familiar sense to the nation.
Okay. And you mentioned Suriname being the only country speaking, not speaking Spanish or no, English you have in Guyana, but what a relationship to the neighboring countries?
The relationships are not very strong. We are actually an island, you could say, on the continent, not only because of the language, but also geographically. There are no roads to the neighboring countries. There's no road leading to Brazil in the south, and there are no bridges crossing the rivers in the east and in the west. So the geographical and the language situation makes us somehow an island within the continent. And of course, we have ambassadors of the neighboring countries residing in Paramaribo, the capital. And, they do their best to integrate somehow their culture and their important topics in Suriname. But it's all on a low level. We feel more connection to the Netherlands still because of the language, and because a lot of our population, a lot of people live there. People go there to study, to work, and there's a lot of traveling back and forth to the Netherlands. So we feel a little bit more connected to a country in Europe than to our neighboring countries in South America.
Okay. And the relationship to the diaspora, as you mentioned, people traveling around, coming back, going to the Netherlands. How can you describe it?
There's a strong connection with the diaspora, but of course, the diaspora has developed itself in a different way, being away from their home country for such a long time. So they are more integrated in Europe than they are still connected with Suriname. And the strangest thing, because now, for instance, in the Netherlands, there's a lot of news on the television, in the newspapers about Suriname because of our celebration. And they will interview people from the diaspora, because in the Netherlands they are seen as Surinamese people.
Okay.
Whereas in Suriname we see them as Surinamese living abroad. And this is a very complicated gap, because those people, of course, they're brown-skinned people, black people, and in the Netherlands they aren't really seen as Dutch people. Whereas in Suriname, there's a gap between daily life in Suriname and their experiences in Europe. So we are one, actually. We have the same background, but we are developing each other ourselves in different ways.
Now about the huge offshore oil that was discovered. How people discuss it as an opportunity, as a threat, as a curse. I heard something from the president telling we could go to a country with 10 billionaires and poverty, or we could try to balance everything. Is this an issue in the public discussions in
Yes.
Suriname?
Yes, it is an issue. Of course, overall, the overall sentiment is happiness. This is an opportunity. We have long been considered a second-rate country, a country that's been colonized in several ways, economically, but also, socially. And now this happens, so a lot of people see it as an opportunity to actually break away from the old bonds with the Netherlands, really maintaining ourselves financially, and which could lead to even more independence mentally, But on the other hand, of course, there's a lot of discussion about the oil curse. You already mentioned that word. Other countries in the world, they have found oil. Their population hasn't benefited from it. Even worse, the population has grown more poor over the years. This is a real reality. We've also seen it happen in our neighboring country, Guyana, formerly British Guyana, where they have found oil some years ago. And a lot of people from abroad are moving to that country, to work in this oil business, and that creates inflation, of course, because all the prices go up. And in Suriname, also, it's a tension with nature. You described that we are forested. There's forest. For 93%, the country is covered by forest, tropical rainforest. This is difficult to maintain, this status of being a carbon negative country. We are one of the 3 carbon negative countries in the world. So that's a really unique status, which could mean that we would be able to receive climate finance by Western countries to maintain our forests. But if the oil and gas sector continues to grow and develop, we might lose the CO, the carbon negative status, which might even cost us more on the long term. So all these topics are being discussed in talk shows and in the newspaper, but overall everybody is very happy because the perspective of Suriname finally making money on its own with an independent government is a lot of people are very happy about that, and they tend to move away from the more negative sides.
I have a completely different question for you. You are an artist, a filmmaker, writer. What you hope the world learns from Surinamese stories? We mentioned already some stories. What do you think? Look at us and see how we did it, and yeah, what do you tell us?
Yes, thank you for that question. I'll tell you a small anecdote. I was in Ghana, Africa, last month.
Okay.
For a literary festival. And people asked me the same sort of question. They said, we have these slave forts along the coasts, enslaved people were shipped out of Ghana and the west coast of Africa towards this new world. And Suriname was one of the countries that received a lot of enslaved people. These people, they asked me the question, we never heard anything past our door of no return. And the door of no return is literally the door that slaves would pass to be shipped out of the country, to be shipped out of Africa. So in their educational system in Ghana, they do not learn that these people African enslaved people built societies in Latin America, in South America, and even in North America. So my mission with my stories in films and in books is to tell the world that, you know, complete new societies are built upon a colonial structure, and we are still here, and we are defining ourselves into a new state of being. You know, while looking back at the past, we are working on our own identities and shaping them. And I think it's very important to know, because it's, you know, the whole Caribbean world and parts of South America, North America, a lot of people are involved in this history. And I think it's really interesting and also important to let the world know that we are here, you know, and there is life past this door of no return.
Curiosity, which are your next projects in
Yes.
literary or filmmaking and so on?
I've just finished the book. It was published in the Netherlands in May, and the title is Bonnie in Search of the Surinamese freedom fighter.
I heard about it. Yes. Okay, but it's in Netherlands. It's in Dutch.
It's in Dutch. I only have an excerpt published in the English magazine Dutch Crossings. You can read it online if you're interested. And I hope, of course, it will be translated into several languages. But this book is about Bonnie, and he was an 18th century freedom fighter in Suriname. He was the son of an African woman and she fled the plantation while being pregnant, raped by the plantation owner, the white plantation owner. And she gave birth to Bonnie in the forest, in the coastal area, which is a swamp, wetlands area. And Bonnie grew out to be a revolt leader, and he freed a lot of enslaved people. And this book I wrote from the perspective of his mother, because I believe that history is usually told from a male perspective. And she must have been a very heroic woman, you know, to flee to the wetlands where it's really hard to find food, to maintain a living, being hunted down all the time by the military army. But she did that. And so part of the book is written from her perspective as a mother, with her history, family background in Africa, in Ghana. Part of the book is written from the perspective of her son. And the two are combined with my story, finding more of his background, Bonnie, the hero, Bonnie, the human being, Bonnie, while searching and talking to people. And for me, it was very important to not use the colonial archives, because they are really stereotypical, you know. Back in the days, a person like Bonnie, a freedom fighter, he was considered to be a terrorist, in fact, a criminal. So I wanted to use different sources, and I used oral history, I used myths, a lot of legends around this person, but I also used a form that's called critical fabulation, where you make up, based on facts, the identity of, in my case, this person, Bonnie, you know, to give him a real face and to make him a person of flesh and blood. And that book was published in May, and I'm doing a documentary based on the book. I'm working on a documentary now, which will be filmed in Ghana. His mother came from Ghana, Suriname, and French Guyana, because Bonnie and his people, the Bonnies, their descendants are still living in French Guyana, which is a country on the east coast of South America.
Wow. Inga just put into the chat the English exception of your book. So if people are interested, just check. Now I have another question, Tessa. What are you doing now? Which kind of party are you joining? In festivities, there are festivals, or what is happening?
Well, tonight I will be going to a theater play by people, two young people. They had their education, their theater school here in Suriname, a very small but very exceptional school. They went to the Netherlands for further education, and now they've come back with a play, and it's called Kot Abra. And Kot Abra in Surinamese means passing over. And I'm very curious if they mean, moving to the Netherlands, passing the ocean, because that's what the play is about. The difference between being Surinamese in Suriname and having to live in the Netherlands. But maybe it's also a spiritual way of passing over, because you leave your culture and the country of your ancestors and move to a new European country. So I'm very looking forward to that. And then afterwards, I probably will end up dancing somewhere because, it's a celebration.
Yes. In the publication, we put also a playlist of music from Suriname. So people that let me show for the public again. This is the publication we are using for the event. Yes. You said you must leave. We are asking now people from the public if they want a question specific for you, if they could put it into the chat, and then we would use it for before you leave. I'm not checking, and I don't know. If not, wait. Inga?
In the meantime, I could also say that there's a wonderful interview with Tessa in our ILA issue on Suriname, and it's really worth a read. And there it focuses a lot on her film Muda Suriname, and also the introduction that she wrote for Anton de Kom's special edition.
Your Sklaven van Suriname, if I pronounce it correctly, is the title of this very famous and important book by Anton de Kom.
Yes. Any questions? If not, no, then we would go further. We recorded an interview yesterday with Rosemarijn Hoefte. She's a professor for history, and she worked a lot on issues like migration, slavery, the whole intersection between ethnicity and gender and so on. So I would say, if it's possible to proceed with the video, it would be great. Come again. Rosemarijn, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. We are in a very specific moment, very symbolic moment in Suriname. You arrived a couple of days ago, I think 5-6 days ago, and as the country celebrates the 5th anniversary of its independence, a milestone that's deeply intertwined with many of the topics and themes that you explore in your work, like nation building, migration, post-colonial identity, and the enduring legacies of slavery and indentured labor. Today we would like to use this anniversary as a starting point to look at how Suriname society, politics, and transnational communities shape and reshape the idea of the nation. Your historical perspective, grounded in the intersection of ethnicity, class, and gender, offers an essential lens for understanding these dynamics. And I think it's important to see the intersection of our aspects. We're delighted to have you with us. Let me begin with our first question. As I said, you arrived in Suriname a couple of days ago for the anniversary. From what you have already observed, the atmosphere, Republic debates, symbolism on the streets, what do these celebrations tell us about how Suriname sees itself today? And how do they resonate with the long and unfinished project of nation building you have written about? So let's start with this question.
Suriname, or Paramaribo, where I am, it looks very, very festive. The streets near the center of town are decorated. There are huge banners, at least 10 or 20, with with lines from the most famous poem in Suriname, One Bonn, one tree, and then it goes one tree, so many leaves, but still one tree. And that is a bit the story of Suriname. And there is there is pride. The pride is very obvious. People are ready to celebrate, and it starts tonight with big fireworks above the Suriname River. And tomorrow there will be a parade and eating and drinking and dancing. So everybody is ready for it. So this is sort of a high mass of nationalism and nation building, as to be expected. But there are also worries about, where is this nation going? And there is not much of reflection yet of what these last 50 years have brought. And yesterday, from outside, I listened to the High Mass in the Cathedral of Suriname in the best. And the Bishop of Suriname, reflected on 50 years of independence. And he said, these have been good times, but also very, very difficult times. But we should also forgive in our hearts and, and try to look forward. So it was very, it didn't name the difficulties that the country has gone through. And I thought it was interesting. It was very diplomatic. But he didn't really speak out about human rights abuse or economic difficulties or political difficulties. He didn't mention them. But I thought it was interesting.
During independence, more than a quarter of the population left the country. How do today's commemorations interact with this history of migration and diaspora? And what does this transnational dimension mean for constructing a shared national narrative? People from migrants commemorating also what kind of, let's say, this dimension of transnational and diaspora. What do you tell us about?
Well, there are large celebrations in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, also national TV and national radio are spending quite some time on looking at the history of independence and how it came about. There are series on Suriname and independence. So there's a lot of attention in the Netherlands. And here, there are a lot of people from the transnational community, especially from the Netherlands, who are coming to Suriname for this celebration. All the hotels, all the B&Bs, everything is packed. There are lots of people in town. So they are here to celebrate as well. So it's celebrated in the Netherlands, but here people from the transnational community are also joining in the celebrations here. But that doesn't mean that the transnational community and the community in Suriname are equally joined in these celebrations. There's a bit of a difference because people here in Suriname are feeling very proud that they stayed and literally built a nation, and say, well, you were the ones who left. So this is a complicated relationship, and with the transnational community, there is contact. There's a lot of contact. There's a lot of also economic exchanges, sending of money and goods and interns and medical personnel coming. And now I heard yesterday from a judge from the court of Amsterdam who is flown in to help the Suriname justice system. So that kind of exchange is going on. But still there is this pride here. We stayed here and we managed to do it.
Okay. Well, and what about a legacy? 50 years of sovereignty, there are legacies, plantation slavery, indentured labor, ethnic pillarization, influencing contemporary ideas of national unity. Do you feel it at the celebrations, or is it something that, is a background, but not really discussed and in the public opinion?
It is discussed, but it's also in certain circles. And you still see some division between ethnic groups. And most people will say, yeah, that's also because of the political system. The political system reinforces that because political parties, by and large, are grounded on ethnicity and not on ideology. So ethnicity is still an important force in politics. And many people see that as an obstacle to unity. And that is also, you may know that Suriname has oil and gas fields offshore, and they're going to exploit that pretty soon. So there's expected to become an economic boom. And when you talk to people, almost everybody, whether highly educated or not, everybody is kind of worried what is going to happen with when the money starts coming in. And everybody says it should be fine if we had different politicians. So there is a lot of skepticism towards the political class. That is very obvious. But there is also this hope now, like, oh, it can, there will be money and maybe things get better. And it is also a source of pride. It is a source of pride. Okay, we are going to become a really important oil supplier.
Okay, and you said skepticism. What are the expectations for the government, for the new president, and do you think she could cope with the situation, which means hopes tied to economic opportunities such as offshore oil and everything, or is this skepticism also towards her and towards the government?
I don't think it's towards her. It's more towards politicians in general. She has stated, she has a year plan, and she was very practical, and I think also, yeah, she has an idea, and she is also saying, we as a society have to deal with the changes, but we also need to do a lot of upgrades. We have to make, we have to use this money to structurally change society. And she specifically talks, and everybody talks about healthcare, about education. And yesterday the bishop said education is in a very deep crisis. So education is the second one, and the third one is infrastructure. Roads, by and large, are pretty bad. The airport is pretty small and outdated. So there are lots of things that need to be done. And she is very cautious as well. She is not going the populist. She's not walking the populist path. She's not saying, okay, I'm going to change everything. She's cautious. But that is her. But you don't know what that means, politicians, when there are the opportunities to make money and so on. And, for every society which would get into this position of large amounts of money coming in, or complete economic change, which is happening here, that is a lot to deal with. And it's in any society, this would be a major challenge. So it's a challenge for Suriname as well.
Yes, it's a challenge. A colleague of mine just told me, remember Angola and the Portuguese colonies, because they got independent exactly 1975. And then a huge amount of oil was discovered in Angola, in one of the most corrupt countries in the world. So you're right that the challenge is quite clear, and I actually don't know how many countries have coped with it in a way that in interest of their own population. And this is a problem. I think the president said herself, we could also get into a society about 10 billionaires and poor people, Or we could create a system that would, let's say, create some kind of social justice, redistribution of wealth, and so on. But these are issues discussed in the public opinion, or is just at the moment only commemorations?
Well, now it's commemoration, but it's also, the looking forward, with, the economic change that is going to come. People are really talking about that. But then you taste the skepticism. And whether you're talking to the taxi driver or to people who are lawyers, and everybody in between, they're all skeptics and saying, we need to see what is happening. And they're also looking, which is, of course, the closest example of a country undergoing this change is Guyana, next door.
Yeah, exactly.
And people are saying, look at Guyana, please try to see what are the do's, what are the don'ts. Let us not make the same mistakes as Guyana has, and let's see what we can learn from them. So people are really looking now at Guyana.
Yeah, okay, well, it's not only a neighbor, the problems are similar. So the question is how to cope with the problems.
Oh, no, Guyana and Suriname are similar countries with surprisingly also very, or not surprisingly, very similar colonial background. And the relationship between Suriname and Guyana has always shifted. First, British Guyana was the wealthier neighboring colony. Then it fell into economic crisis. Then Suriname was doing better. Now Guyana is doing better again. So they're mirroring each other. And Suriname has always looked at Guyana. And so now they really look at it like, okay, we really need to take some lessons.
Okay. The last question about the colonial legacy and the relationship to the Netherlands. How is the presence of the Netherlands in the celebration?
It's interesting. I'm staying in a hotel where there are the former Dutch colonial troops have the reunion, and they're going to march in the parade, and they're 80 plus. They are going to march. There is a Dutch military presence, as there is a French military presence, American. And there is no obvious animosity towards the Netherlands. But that is also, there is, at the diplomatic level, the highest level, the relationship has been complicated, especially during the regimes of Desi Bouterse, the former military commander. Now the relationship is rebuilding. The Dutch Prime Minister will be there tomorrow. The King is visiting next week, and that is his first state visit to Suriname. This is actually the first state visit of the Netherlands to the independent republic. So there is this rebuilding of relations, also of diplomatic relations, but at a lower level, there have been relations between schools, between hospitals, between city governments. There is money as apology for slavery. People are restoring buildings, museums. That is Dutch money coming in. But that is seen as, reparation, basically, a very limited form of reparation. So there always have been strong relations. And that has to do with the transnational community in the Netherlands. Because it's also that transnational community, and especially the Surinamese community, that really pushed for recognition for their past, for the colonial past, and the way Suriname has suffered. And that goes, also for example, the Dutch Caribbean islands. But what the Surinamese were pushing for a national slavery monument, were pushing for apologies for slavery. They are the ones who really put this on the agenda in the Netherlands.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining. Okay, we are back again. Yes, and we'll continue with Inga, because the idea was to promote a little bit the publication, as I showed you already, the ILA publication, which is a little bit unique. I don't know how many publications were dedicated to Suriname in the past. And Inga is one of the editorial coordinators of the special issue. And is our co-moderator, so she's also looking into your questions. So if you have questions and comments, just put it on the chat. And it was a privilege for me to join the editorial team during 2 or 3 of the meetings that they have. And editorial concept frames all the key topics that we are dealing with: the shadow of colonial structures, the social inequalities in the post-independence period, the political fragmentation along ethnic lines. So we just talked about it, the pressures facing indigenous and Maroon communities, and so on. So I have some questions for you. Actually, I want to know, how are you going to deal in the future? Because we have a lot of material, a lot of important interviews and so on. This will be my final questions. Let's start with another one. What motivated the editorial team to dedicate a special issue to Suriname at this particular historical moment? And of course, how did you select and prioritize the topics from the 75 immigration wave to questions of nation building, democracy, and so on?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe first of all, to give an overview, as the magazine is publishing 10 issues every year, and we are dedicating at least one issue to a specific country in Latin America. And yeah, we just realized we've never did a full issue on Suriname. We had, of course, like some articles about Anton de Kom as like one of the most important voices on slavery, and yeah, then also the mental process, like the processing the trauma that slavery has left. And for this issue, we luckily had 2 of our members traveling to Suriname just the year before. And this was a great opportunity to get firsthand impressions, as the speakers already mentioned, Suriname being a Dutch-speaking country and also being a very small country is creating an interesting perspective and also needs a new framework or new vocabulary to look at. So we were really coming in as a magazine interested in Latin American perspectives and Caribbean perspectives, and really wanting to do the introduction, to look at an introduction to how to understand Suriname, coming from a mostly Spanish and Brazilian speaking context, or also from these discussions. So we decided to give it to have topics that cover very important steps to make sense of the process of Suriname to becoming the nation that it, or the country that it is now. So we looked at slavery, the abolition movement, of course, then the contract labor system that forms another dependency system, although you can say this is something that already can be looked at more, and to then building an independent state, and the challenges that this has with the military coup by DC Bouterse, for example, in the 80s. And so our idea was mostly to present and emphasize these guiding moments in the history that shape Suriname as a country and society, and to give this introductory framework for the German-speaking audience to make an introduction to then further read about Suriname.
And what is the follow-up now? Because now we have the magazine already with important, but things are happening. No, for instance, the discussion that we just had about offshore oil and the oil curse and so on. So, what are the perspectives you feel that are important to continue to highlight for a German-speaking leadership?
Yeah, I also feel that once we had the contributions to the magazine that also brought the hope that oil brings to the country also on the table, we thought about this as we thought about how it is possible to approach this topic where it happens at a moment of building a lot of pride for the country. As we've heard, there's a lot of autonomy or hope on autonomy being put on it, while at the same time having the COP in Belém, or also focusing a lot on extractivism and fights on extractivism, that are very prominent in Latin America. And we also have a directed question to from the audience.
Okay, go on.
That is, in how far did the discussion in the Belém COP about getting out of the fossil era and the request for a clear schedule for this become discussed in Suriname? In that respect, the COP discussions introduce an aspect beyond the resource course, i.e. the concentration of oil revenues in the pockets of few people. That is the destruction of nature and climate oil. Is this discussed in Suriname?
Well, yeah, there is at least a position of the former president and of the president now, who said, make no mistake, we are not destroying our forests now after we discovered oil. And this contradiction is not only in Suriname, as was mentioned as one of the main countries determined by tropical forest, but we also had this in Brazil in the COP, protecting tropical forests and at the same time prospecting for oil. And this contradict and as we heard, it's difficult to deal with it politically because people are proud of having probably a wealth coming from the prospection of oil. So, and this is, I don't think we have now in a more clear contradiction as in the case of Suriname and Guyana, as mentioned. What shall we do with the resources that we are getting and that we are proud of now? And at the same time, we are a country covered by 93% of tropical forest. I don't know how it was discussed now exactly during the COP, but the problem is clear, I think.
Yeah, from what I gathered was that Suriname has presented themselves as the carbon neutral state at the COP in Belém, as like one of the few, while at the same time continuing to see the oil production as this new resource for gaining money and keeping with the fossil production. I feel
we cannot judge from outside and see, let the oil there and be a fine country with a lot of tropical forest. And this is the point that they have to learn themselves. And as Rosemarijn said, let's look what is happening in Guyana and see which are the lessons that we can learn from them. And but it's a huge challenge for the country. That's for sure. Do you have any other questions? Yes.
There is a question to Tessa if she did not leave already.
Tessa, is she still there?
No.
Just go ahead, put the question, and then we'll see how we are going to deal with it.
The question broke up in the middle about necessary mechanism to get access to, and then it's blank.
Okay, maybe the person could rewrite it, and then we could comment on it. If not, okay. Any more remarks, comments, and so on? I just want to tell you that I was very happy to join a little bit to the crew, the team that was working with the magazine, and it's great to do something like that, to put a country which is not known, is not in the center, and to use the opportunity of the 50 years independence to stress what is happening there. And after reading about Suriname, I decided to travel to Suriname next year, definitely. And just want you also to encourage you to see how this country is coping in the future with the problems and with the opportunities also. Yeah. And if no one is keen to tell something, then I would say let's stop. This event will be put online, so you can recommend it for the future for other people that couldn't join. And I think it's our two speakers were excellent, perfect. Okay, Gabi and Gerd, access in German. Can you read it, Inga?
Yeah, this was the question to Tessa. What should be the necessary mechanisms to get access in German to Dutch cultural products such as theater, books, and films beyond learning Dutch?
Yeah, it is our task, I think. Okay, well, then thank you very much for joining. And next year we will have again some joint events together with ILA, LAF and ILA. And as I said, the event will be on video in our webpage, so we can recommend it for other people that want to learn a little bit about this very interesting country.